Hi everyone, Brandon here with Galloway Precision. Today we are going to go over the installation of our newest trigger. This one is for the Kel-Tec CP33. We'll also be going over the installation of our extended safeties for the same model. Notice my charging piece is off. We're actually developing an O-ring charger and a couple other pieces to swap out on your charging handle. But this is the Titan short stroke trigger. This is a strictly competition pistol. Obviously you can use it for other things too, but it was designed with 22 competition in mind. It's a 33 round mag stock. Taylor Freelance worked real close with them and make an extension to where you can put a whole 50 round box of 22 in this little guy. So we'll be making some pretty cool parts for it. With our new machine we just got in, our Tormac, we'll be doing some muzzle brakes and such, and some other pretty cool stuff. Now that we'll have a machine on site for rapid prototyping and things like that. Alright, so the Siegfried, meaning marvelous victory. I think I already covered that, but just to be safe. Alright, so let's go over tools you're going to need. You're going to need a pair of needle nose pliers. You're going to need one 2.5 millimeter wrench. You need your 050 Allen wrench. You're going to need two 5/64 Allen wrenches. You need your flathead screwdriver. You'll need your shepherd's crook, hook, pick. You'll need a 3/32 punch, and then any of your punches that are bigger and flatter on the bottom, and we'll get into that later on. And of course your bench block. So let's go ahead and lock and clear. We are visually and physically empty. So let's go ahead and start stripping. First things first, I like to take my 3/32 and use it to push out, because this thing can be a real beast. Push out your takedown. We're not going to be doing anything with the upper receiver, so go ahead and just set it off to the side. Alright, the first thing we'll go over, they're already on here, but these will be the easiest part to change. This is where you'll need two 5/64. Alright, so in order to change, as you can see, I've already got them on both sides, but in order to change this, you'll need, for both sides, a 5/64. Reason being, because you're going to turn the opposite direction on one of them to get it off. In this case, we're going to take the left one off, because that's what we need to do to strip the pistol. But it's really this simple. You'll take this off, take your old safety off, you'll take your screw, put it through your new extended safety, and then it's pretty impossible to screw up. You'll notice that the markings here on the back, the little tits that stick up, are going to go exactly where they should go in the cutout on the safety itself. And you'll just put that on. As you can see, it all matches up. Tighten it down, you're good to go. Alright, so that's the installation of the extended safety. They'll come in sets, one for each side, and it's much faster on and off the safety with this thing. Alright, so that's the first piece you're going to take off to tighten. Alright, so now we're going to take our 2 millimeter, and we're going to take, now yours may be different on your frame. I'm pretty sure these come with the screws going in from the left, but I like it set up on the right personally, just because the locking nuts stick out a little bit, and I'm right-handed, so it's just more comfortable not having that stuff sticking in the way when I'm sitting ready to go, or sitting down here having that poking in your hand while you're trying to shoot. So that's just personal preference. So whichever side they're on, go ahead and remove them. And before we completely remove all of our screws, we're going to ride the hammer forward. This is about usually the time I do it. Take your safety off, ride your hammer forward. You'll see why here in a minute. This hammer spring is serious on this thing. If you leave that thing sprung, try to pull this apart, it is not a good time for anyone involved. Some of you may remember a few weeks ago, about a month ago, you saw a picture I posted of my thumbnail right here completely. Yeah, that was this hammer spring. Shot up while I was reseating it and just absolutely went right through my nail. So definitely make sure the hammer is up in the forward position so there's less tension on the hammer spring. Alright, now we're ready to remove these two screws from this side, and on the grip for the mag release we're going to remove this screw, and I'll show you why when we get to that part. Let's go ahead and take that one out, and this one of course we're using our 5/64. Now the only two that you may need the two for, and this one's been apart so many times that for testing parts and things that I don't really need to do it. But obviously if you get up to this point and we're wanting the right side to come out, if it doesn't, use your other 5/64, hold that one in place, loosen. Now you're going to hold that one in place, and we're going to take the left side screw off for the mag release. And once you get it loose, you don't need to really hold the screw anymore. You can hold it with your thumb. Alright, so we've got all that apart. So now we're going to start by prying. Alright, now the hammer spring may still come off, so keep your fingers away from the mag well. This is the scariest part of the whole thing because things just start coming apart. Oh, I don't want to do this. Alright, now you'll see that sometimes see how the area is stuck? Just go ahead and take your 3/32, get it up in there, and just push the hammer spring off. And then this whole side's going to come off. Alright? So the very first thing we're going to do, you'll notice our feed ramp came out. We'll go over that here in a second. But more importantly, the trigger pivot and the trigger bar and trigger are all on the right side. Our mag release is in this side. We're going to take our needle nose, we're going to pull out our hammer spring seat, put it in. Alright. We're going to take our shepherd's hook and go ahead and respring the hammer, because this is not one where you're going to be able to respring this once it's all back together. There's not enough room to reach up there and do it. If someone develops a way, I'd be more than happy to hear about it. Alright, next we're going to take our feed ramp, okay? We're going to take our flathead that we've got our little notch cut in. I'm going to take this spring, because you can see that spring, and this is the slide lock right here. So that spring is going to rotate, go into that hole. This T is going to go into that piece right there. Alright. I find the easiest way to do this is as I'm pushing the T into its locking point, I'm also taking that spring and winding it at the same time so that it goes into the slide lock hole. And sometimes that slide lock likes to move around. Just once you've got the spring in place, take your flathead and just pop it into place. It should sit right on that. Alright, we got that part done. Now we can go ahead and remove the trigger and trigger bar and the trigger pivot. Alright, I'm going to take the trigger pivot out, put it in on the left side. Now, let's explain why we took the left side screw out instead of the right side. You can see on the mag release where the spring sits. If you take this screw out on the right side, that spring is such a pain in the butt to go back in when you're putting everything together. It's just much easier as you can see, to just let the mag release stay attached to the right side, pull it off from the left. Alright, so now we've taken our stock trigger out. Tighten. I'm going to start by putting our trigger return spring on, making sure it's sprung just like that. Okay, see how it sits? 90-degree arm of the spring goes here. This is all the part that goes back, grabs a hold of this here hammer engagement area and makes the trigger actually pull. Now the reason we made this a two-piece, so we get a nice smooth surface on both sides of the print. Doesn't make it any harder. All you're going to do is put that on, put this piece on, and you'll notice the cutout relief right there where the return spring sits. So keep your trigger bar forward. We're going to slide that on, and it rests against the trigger pivot, and go ahead and spring your trigger bar. All right, just like that. Now we are ready to go back together. Now, before we put it back together, you've got your pre and post travel stops. I usually start, because once this is put together, you'll have to pull it back apart to adjust the pre-travel. You can't get up in there. I usually leave it about 2 threads. That's about all you need. In the future, we may go ahead and just have that point built in to the print. But we like it adjustable for the simple fact that, you know, it's a molded gun. 90% of this gun's molded, so you're going to have tolerance fluctuations. So this will allow you to set it where you want. Alright, so now we're ready to put the right side of the frame back on. Alright, you notice everything's nice and neat, put together, we're good to go. So let's go ahead and, sorry I got sidetracked there for a second. Go ahead and put the right side of the frame on. Now I like to get it started at the bottom. You're going to see it doesn't quite line up, so you can take your 3/32 and get your, because it is under a little bit of tension, and get it moved around to where the hammer seat will line up where it's supposed to. And this is honestly the hardest part, because you're trying to get this on while keeping that sprung. As you can see, it immediately likes to come apart. So when you go to pull this back apart, every time the trigger pivot's going to go back to the other side. So just pull it all back apart. Put our little sling system back in here. That's more than a sling system, it's actually structural, so if you remove that, the gun's going to probably not work so hot. And we'll take our Siegfried, put our pieces back on, put our pivot back in. Oh, dropped my other piece. Put everything on the pivot, making sure that our trigger return spring stays sprung. Put it on. Alright, oh, hey now. It doesn't take much for that to pop off, so like I said, hardest part's actually putting it back together. So I'm going to try and line up those holes on the bottom as well as the ones on top, kinda at the same time. And the trigger pivot's going to want to move around. Everything likes to move, just for the simple fact, because why not? Alright, so now that we're all back together, give it a nice little squeeze. Alright, make sure that there's nothing in the way, and we're ready to start putting our frame screws back in. So again, like I said, personal preference, left or right, doesn't matter. I'm going to take our 2.5mm and put all our frame screws back in first, and then we'll put our 5/64 frame screws back on. Ah, come on. And the frame screws are pretty self-explanatory. Your longest one goes right here. where what would normally be the locking block, but since this is an actual lower and upper receiver built after the CMR 30 carbine, it's more akin to that than anything else. And you don't need to over tighten any of this stuff. Once it's hand snug and you can see the seam is nice and close together where you're tightening everything, that's as tight as you need to make it. Any tighter and you will either break your grip frame from the pressure, or the internals may not move correctly because they've got undue pressure put on them. It's squeezing it. So as soon as it's hand tight, stop. They nylon treat all their screws, so you don't need to re-lock tight every single time. That's what that yellow stuff is a similar to VC3, a type of nylon that will stay in place. And then last, we'll put our extended safety back on. Now when I'm putting this back on, when I've got the screw already through it, if it gets a little off center, no big deal. Let me just line it up where it should, tighten it down, and that's it. Alright, now we're going to take that flat pin punch that doesn't do anything but this. This is what we're using it for. We're going to cock the hammer with it. Alright, so that we can put the upper receiver back on. You cannot put the upper receiver on if the hammer is forward. Alright, so we're going to put the upper receiver on and do a function test, and we're done. Alright, so our upper's on. Go ahead and put your takedown pin back in. First thing we're going to do is going to place it on safe, pull the trigger, nothing happens. Take the weapon off safe, trigger. If you've got it adjusted fairly well right off the bat, you'll hear the hammer fall. Alright, now you'll have your charging piece on, but like I said, we've got ours off because we're designing. So hold the trigger, rack it, knock everything over on your bench, why not? Release, you should hear reset, pull, hammer falls. Now, obviously, this has been adjusted already, so we're going to purposely take it out of adjustment. So the idea here, like I said, we're going to start with our pre-travel set at about 2 threads out, just like it is now. So what you're going to want to do is hold the trigger to the rear, rack it. As long as you get reset, you're good. Now what we're doing is we're going to adjust the over travel. Pull the trigger and the hammer doesn't fall, so you're going to take your 050 Allen wrench and 1/4 turn counterclockwise at a time. Turn the post travel screw until the hammer falls. And once you get the hammer to fall, you will go 1 more 1/4 turn and your post travel is set. Alright, so there we go, we get brake. So give it 1 more 1/4 turn and your post travel is set. Our pre-travel is already set. Again, when you go to do the pre-travel, if you don't get the 1 click, just take back apart and you will turn the pre-travel screw clockwise. But most of these are going, well, all of them will go out with just 2 threads to begin with. Again, it's there for tolerance variations in the grip frame. But you guys, I gotta say, when I saw this pistol at SHOT Show, Titan, again, not Siegfried. The other stuff we're developing, this is definitely something I'm going to have to pick up. Competition wise, you can't beat it. I mean, you got a nice long barrel, it's weighted correctly, it's even weight front and back. We're going to be looking at developing a way to add a shockwave pistol brace, things like that. Be looking at barrel extensions. We're looking to do compensators, all sorts of fun stuff, muzzle brakes, everything. So very impressive. I like this little pistol a lot. It's a lot of fun to shoot, and 33 rounds, honestly, you're going to wear out before the gun does. But that's going to wrap this up for the extended safety and Siegfried installation. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email me at tech, that's Tango Echo Charlie Hotel, at GallowayPrecision.com. Be sure to follow us on social media here on YouTube. Like, comment, and subscribe below. Be sure to follow us on Gunstreamer, Facebook, Instagram, and Vimeo. And as always, be safe, be accurate, and God bless.